Hey guys, Mike Toy here with Bonsai Boise. So this is just going to be a quick video to document this ugly duckling of a tree here. So this is a Ficus Benjamina that I've had for maybe 3 or 4 years. It's in really rough shape, as you can see. So the story behind this guy is that I potted it into this big pot about 2 years ago. I think it was winter of 18 going into winter of 19, and it is now January of 2021. And it did fine all winter, and then I put it outside in the spring. I think it was around April or so, late April, and it was just barely too soon for it. And it did not like it at all because it dropped all of its leaves, almost died, and it just has been kind of barely hanging on ever since then. So I think what it really came down to is we had a cold snap, kind of an unexpected cold snap, and so it didn't like the change from being indoors all winter to going outdoors and then experiencing this cold snap and then the bright sunlight. It was just too much and it threw it into shock. So anyways, it's been in recovery mode ever since. I didn't even know if it was going to live, but it did. And it's starting to bounce back, as you can see. We've got some new growth here. You can see this brighter green leaves and branches here. So the problem with it is that, I want to scoot this light back so it's not such a glare here. There we go. Might be a little bit better, hopefully. The problem with it is many things. One is that it's still just barely hanging on. Not barely hanging on, but I'd say barely recovering. It's not recovering very fast. I mean, it's been 2 years now, and this is what we got. So there's that. Also, the branching structure is just, it's a mess. I mean, you may or may not notice it at first glance, but when you really dive deep and take a look, you can see, here we've got these lower branches that are thinner than the upper branches, like almost progressively, and then it gets even thicker up top. So that's a problem. And then on top of that, we've got a couple branches here, like one going this 90-degree angle, and then it comes out and this long curve coming out to this, and then this one here, kind of same story, comes way up and out, and over here, let me spin it around here, look at it from the side. So this one, it's a jungle in there. So this one, can't seem to get in there very good. Hang on, bear with me. Okay, so here we've got, a branch coming out right at the elbow, I'd call it, of the branch in the trunk. That's a problem. And then up here, it branches into two, which is fine. And here branches into two, which is fine. And then this guy kind of right at that point, that's a problem. And then up here, it's just, structurally speaking, it's just kind of a mess. So, traditionally speaking, what you're supposed to do with trees, and I believe in this too for the most part, is when it's in recovery mode, simply let it recover. Just let it grow unchecked. Let it regain all of its vigor and health again, and then, do what you need to do from there, repot it or whatever. I have debated on doing that versus repotting it and doing a big chop. And my reasoning for repotting and doing a big chop is I've also experienced the exact opposite of conventional wisdom, where doing some chops and some cuts and a repot into fresh soil actually stimulates the tree, and then it just bounces back like it was, asleep the whole time, basically. So whatever it was holding it back, it's like you're cutting it off, and then it just takes off from there. I have experienced that. Couldn't tell you the science behind why one reacts one way and the other doesn't, but I've experienced it. So I've been debating on this one, which one to do, whether to leave it alone and let it grow, or whether to do the chop and the repot. I decided to do the chop and the repot. I'll call it the Great Reset. Seems appropriate these days. And so my reasoning is because it's been in this soil for about 2 years. Can't even remember exactly what kind of mix I used in it. I put it in this big pot originally because of the fact I wanted it to really grow and thicken up and grow crazy. So that's why I put it in a much bigger pot than it would normally deserve. So I'm gonna do a big chop right here. Hang on, let me get this to focus a little bit better. Okay, hopefully that worked. I adjusted the light a little bit, so I'm hoping it'll focus better. Anyway, so what I'm planning to do here is I'm going to do a big chop right here. And my reasoning behind this is a couple of things. One, it will eliminate all this reverse taper awkward stuff that we got going on. So then we'll just have the smaller branch connecting with the larger trunk, and that'll smooth out over time, and it will just taper correctly, being thinner and getting thicker and thicker as it goes down to the base. Also, it's going to eliminate all this weird branching structure, which frankly, the more I look at it and the more I've been sort of debating and pondering what to do with this thing, I don't know how to really fix this branching structure. So I'm going to get rid of this right now, actually, because it's bugging me. It's just covering everything up, getting right in the way. Same with this one. There, I think that's what was messing up my focus. It was just those two little branches poking out at us. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make the big chop right there. I'm going to repot it into some fresh soil, into another pot. Also a pot that's a little smaller, just because, you know, it's hard to, when space is an issue and you have a million trees, you know, you got one little Ficus Benjamina taking up a gigantic pot. Just kind of complicates things. So now, if you're wondering why I have these two water bottles here, I am going to make some cuttings out of this. Because, I mean, we got some pretty decent sized trunk, 2 years worth of trunk, 2 or 3 years. I'm going to try and make some cuttings out of this. So it's a bit of a gamble doing this, but I think that it can handle it. I mean, even if it doesn't bounce back the way I'm hoping it does, I think it will at least survive. And, you know, might struggle for a while, but what do you got to lose at this point when it's been struggling past couple years anyway? So best case scenario here in this operation is it will take off, you know, and really start to regain its life and vigor again after I make the big cut, and it will become a nice beautiful tree someday, like a swan from an ugly duckling. And these will turn into cuttings. What I'm thinking I'm going to do here is make the cut here. I'm going to try and keep this long one as one cutting. This will be one cutting. That'll be one cutting. And I'll get rid of some of this other little stuff. One quick note on that is this fresh green that you see here on Ficus Benjaminas, that will not take as a cutting. It just won't. It'll immediately die off. It's too weak. With these Ficus Benjaminas, you could almost say the thicker the branch, the harder the wood, the better your chances are that it will take as cutting. So I'll end up getting rid of a lot of this stuff and kind of keeping it down to just as little foliage as I can with cutting. So best case scenario, the cuttings will take, this will take off once I make the big cut, and life will be good again. Worst case scenario, it goes down in flames as a tragic failure and everything dies and this is all for nothing. And if that's the case, I'll post it. I'll own it and say, hey, guess what? That didn't work. I screwed up and the tree's dead. So I'm not going to document my repotting process here just because, you know, it's boring and if you've seen one, you've seen them all. So, but I am going to make this big cut. So here goes. I'm going to do this right now. About there. See if I can do this one-handed. Whew. I forgot to say this won't hurt a bit. That would have been a lie. I'm sure that hurt a lot. So there it is. So that's the big cut. That's what it will eventually look like here in a second when I repot it. So I'm going to cut these down to size, put them in water bottles, repot this. I'll be right back with you and I'll show you the end result. See you in a minute. All right, so here's cutting number one. This was the big part, the top. Cut off a lot of the foliage here and try to keep it to the right balance. It's always tough to figure out the balance of how many leaves to leave and how many not to. If you're wondering why I left this little knobby here on the bottom, it's to hold it at the right place in the bottle of water so that the whole thing doesn't fall in there, because I don't want roots growing off of the top. I just want it to grow off the bottom. The only tricky part with doing it that way is you have to really stay on top of it to make sure that, because this will evaporate. Like within a couple days, it'll drop down half an inch, a couple days, you know. So you want to make sure by doing that that you're leaving you're refilling it with water a lot, which I'll do. Something else I'll mention too is I usually put these cuttings in a north-facing window. It's just a little trick that I have found works the best with cuttings, because south-facing windows get all the bright light, and you don't want that because they don't have roots yet, so it's too much pressure on the leaves and not enough roots to support it. So north-facing window has worked the best for me when propagating cuttings. It's just the right amount of non-intense lighting, indirect non-intense light. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Let me work on these others real quick now. So here's a look at the roots, or what's left of them after I made some cuts. It was as messy in there as it was on top where the branches were. So both branches and roots were just a mess. You can see these big, thick potato roots that were just going in all directions. And something else that I noticed, even though it was in there for 2 years, that's the depth that the roots penetrated. So there was something wrong with the soil that I was using. I don't know what, or I don't know what the problem was. It just happens sometimes. But it didn't really penetrate deep into the pot, so that was part of the issue. So here it is after I made the cuts. I'm just going to try to fit it into this little black pot now. So just wanted to give you a look at that. All right, so here it is in its semi-final form. Put a little bit of a lean to it, as you can see, just to give it some movement and character as it strengthens up and grows. So it's not much to look at right now, but it's got potential. Still very young, but left a little bit on the top here just to give it some room to die back. So got some good cuttings from it. Hopefully I can get some of these to root, especially that big one there. As you saw, the roots were in, they were as bad as the branches were. I mean, they were just in awful shape and going in all the wrong directions and all the wrong places. So I had to make some big decisions on which ones to leave and which ones to keep, and keeping in mind that the goal here was to rehabilitate the tree, so you typically want to save as much as you can when you're trying to do that. So I tried to save as much as I can while getting it in order as best I could down there. So anyway, that's it in the nutshell. So just wanted to give a quick look at my little ugly duckling and its great reset. So I'll post some updates when some updates occur, and we'll see you then. Thanks for watching.